Hello and welcome to Dialogue. China and Southeast Asian countries, known collectively as ASEAN, have just upgraded their free trade agreement at a recent gathering in Malaysia. The new pact expands cooperation into key emerging areas: the digital economy, green trade, and supply chain connectivity. Alongside the ASEAN Summit was the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Leaders Summit, the first meeting of RCEP leaders since the agreement was signed 5 years ago. So what do we know about the key outcomes of this year's summit? How important are they amid today's turbulent global trade environment? And what new opportunities could this upgraded FTA bring, not only for ASEAN and China, but for the wider region as well? Join us for today's discussion live from Beijing. I'm Xu Qinduo. Well, joining me today are Professor Rong Ying from Sichuan University, Professor Anna Rosario Malindog-Uy, Director and Vice President for External Affairs of the Asian Century Philippines Strategic Studies Institute, and Peter Chang, Research Associate at the Malaysia-China Friendship Association. Welcome to the show. So Peter, we'll start with you. You are at where all those events took place. So this is one of ASEAN's most consequential summit in years. What do you think is are the major outcomes of this year's event?
Well, the major takeaway, Qinduo, is this. In ASEAN, in this part of the world, multilateralism is alive. Free trade is alive. Globalization is well alive and kicking. There is no talking about decoupling or deglobalization. We are committed to multilateralism, free trade, and globalization. And the community, ASEAN as a whole, has affirmed that over this week through many, many meetings and many, many declarations. We are going to continue with or without the US globalization in this part of the world.
A strong message there. And, maybe because of that, Timor-Leste has officially become ASEAN's 11th member, the bloc's first expansion since the 1990s. We see the videos, of this country's working staff, celebrating the event with tears, that went viral. There's a reason, right? What do you see as this new expansion here?
Yeah, just to give also my perspective on what are the major achievements of the ASEAN Summit that just recently concluded in Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur. I think you mentioned that one of this really is the accession or the acceptance as a member of ASEAN of East Timor, which is actually a very important undertaking, or what happened in the ASEAN Summit, precisely because this provides some kind of legitimacy in terms of sovereignty as far as East Timor is concerned, and it gives to some kind of regional recognition for East Timor being a member of ASEAN. I think that's very important. And on the other hand, as far as ASEAN is concerned, this actually talks about ASEAN talks about ASEAN's inclusivity, and it kind of aligned to what you call the ASEAN vision of regional integration, and the so-called that ASEAN don't want any country or any kind or smaller states in the region to be left behind. So this is some kind of an exemplification. I think another major achievement of the ASEAN Summit is, of course, the CAFTA, the China-ASEAN upgraded 3.0 trade agreement, which is very important. And one more thing I think that I would want to highlight is the peace accord between Cambodia and Thailand that was signed during the ASEAN Summit. I think these are very important development at the moment. And of course, I would also agree with Peter that, in ASEAN and in our region in Asia Pacific, multilateralism is very much alive, globalization is alive, and partnership and regional integration is very much alive, even though external forces will not agree to this. But as far as Asia Pacific is concerned, of course, Southeast Asia is included in that. China is included in that. We have this kind of trend, and I think this is the sense of time as far as Asia Pacific is concerned.
Yeah, very clear message there. Rong Ying, if you look at this upgraded free trade agreement between China and ASEAN, let's say original agreement was launched in 2002 and it came into force in 2010. That's 15 years ago. If you look at what happened during the times, two sides, have a combined market of more than 2 billion people. Two-way trade has surged from, let's say, 15 years ago, that's about $235 billion, and to nearly $1 trillion last year. ASEAN and China are each other's top trading partners now. So, I mean, we can say for sure the FTA has played a significant role in bringing the two sides together, in increasing their trade and investment. Is that the case?
Yeah, it is true. Certainly, I think if you look at the trade just itself, certainly I think China and ASEAN has now the top trading partners to one another. And if you look at even the investment side, I think the accumulated number I have had, I think as top to 450 billions, so US dollars. So it's quite a lot. And also, of course, if you look at the numbers, I mean, the traveler, people that are visiting each other because of the sort of a mutually simplification or exemption of that visas and others. So we have seen more and more Chinese and, of course, ASEAN, people from ASEAN visiting each other. So this is very much marks a sharp contrast to the other negative, unfortunately, trends where because of geopolitics, because of these decoupling or de-risking sort of measures, I think all the exchanges have suffered some various kind of disruption. So all in all, China and ASEAN, and certainly because very much because of trade investment, but also I think because that the growing trend of that connectivities, we are going to see not only more. I think the best time today, but we are seeing a very promising future in the years ahead.
Mm-hmm. The two sides have seen, updated, the updated this FTA twice. First to streamline customs and investment procedures, and now with this new 3.0 upgrade protocol, they are going to bring the agreement into the new area, so-called emerging area, digital and green trade in economy, and also say supply chain connectivity. Peter, how do you look at these expansion? What does it mean for both sides?
Oh, this is a sign. Really, it's as you have said. China is moving towards a high quality development thing. We are seeing the FTA 3.0 as embracing that. We are moving beyond just the bricks and mortars now. We are going into green economy, digital economy, and AI-driven economy. So we are climbing up the value chain. Our trade has grown in both its size and also its quality, and this is absolutely critical. And this is partly driven in large part by China's sort of advancement that is driving us along. Southeast Asia and the other countries within RCEP itself. So we see a very positive trajectory, a trajectory that is future orientated and bringing us up the value chain. That's a positive move, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think if you look at the expansion of trade between the two sides, Anna, from the Chinese point of view, this also coincides with what happened earlier. Actually, here in Beijing, there's a top-level meeting of the party discussing the priorities of the next 5 years. One of the priorities is, the goal of expanding high-level opening up. Can we say, we're now seeing these concrete steps in that direction with expanded trade into new areas between China and ASEAN here?
Yes, I think so. Because if you really look at CAFTA or the China ASEAN Free Trade Agreement 3.0, it's really an upgrade of the CAFTA 1.0. Because if you look at CAFTA 1.0, it focused more on tariff reduction in terms of tariff. It's more on the tariff reduction, so it's more on the trade. That's more on numbers. But if you really look at CAFTA and the recently concluded CPC plenum that happened in Beijing, you can see that there is what you call a transformation. It's not anymore focused on quantitative, but more on qualitative. That's why in the China side, it is more focused on trying to, how do you call that? It's what you call high level development or modernization for that matter. So now the CAFTA 3.0 is more focused on digital trade, green energy, green economy, and supply chain. So you can see that there is such a thing as a structural deepening between the strategy of China when you talk about its modernization and it's what you call outward economic diplomacy, with reference to its the domestic reform agenda, economically speaking. If we're talking about economics, so you can see the synergy at the moment between between this upgraded trade agreement and also the strategy that China is actually putting forward, which is, as you said, it's focused on high level opening up. So you can see the synergy. So it means that China and ASEAN would have deeper economic integration in from this point onward, and I think this is very good when you talk about resilience and when you talk about amid the turbulence that is happening when you talk about trade in the world right now. And in many ways, this will isolate as Asia Pacific to a greater extent to economic shocks that the United States is waging when you talk about trade tariff war. So I think this is a very exciting moment for Asia Pacific, not only for ASEAN and even not only for China.
Rong Ying, of course, we know that for China, ASEAN is critically important. ASEAN has become China's top, trading partner in recent years. Partly because of there's a lot of pressure from Washington. We know the trade war, tariff war. Beijing and Washington. Of course, China is trying to diversify away its trade relationship with ASEAN countries. But at the same time, I think as China continues to open up its different sectors. For example, they are trying, latest round of opening up is believed to be focused on expanding market access. And also, during the 15th five-year plan, China is trying to highlight the development of new quality productive forces, basically to boost domestic consumption. That means more import, not only more production, but also more import from, of course, our top trading partners, for example.
Exactly. I think that is why we see that more and promising sort of opportunities in terms of for win-win, high-quality win-win cooperation, if I can say, between China and ASEAN. As a matter of fact, if you look at the history, if you look at the trajectory of China and ASEAN cooperation, win-win cooperation in the past decades, ever since, I think there always been first and foremost on the kind of upward sort of a trend. But most importantly, I would argue that whenever China adopts kind of a new or upgrade of its development model and taking into account what is happening domestically and internally, that provides more opportunities for win-win cooperation. The fact that China, on the one hand, has very much now focused on kind of build up kind of a dual circulation sort of pattern, focusing very much on domestic and also in the meantime for high level opening up, provide more opportunities for China and ASEAN win-win cooperation. That's exactly the reason why the FTA, the protocol, upgrade protocol of FTA 3.3.0 that is going to be implemented by this year is going to provide is significant. And as you rightly said, that China not only has in the past has provided mostly, I think, for most of the commodities, that is imported from ASEAN, zero tariff, but it's going to provide more sort of market access by simplifying or getting rid of these various kind of non-trade tariff barriers. But the most important thing I would argue is that as China upgraded its development, building modern industrial sectors, digital trade, green transition, and so on and so forth, I think China would working together closely with ASEAN for that. And by making ASEAN or making China ASEAN as a role model or pace setter for that kind of win-win cooperation. So that's why I think the both sides, with that strategy or thinking in mind, I think in pursuing their respective modernization with its own characteristics, the two sides, China and ASEAN, are going to have more and more stakes in each other's success. That is, I think, not only makes political diplomatic sense, but more importantly, I think, in terms of economic and social development.
It's much more meaningful beyond the trade pact itself. Peter, what Rong Ying has said reminds me of durian, the important fruit from Malaysia, from Thailand, from Vietnam. And usually it's you can find it in big cities like Beijing and Shanghai, but nowadays in China, in the countryside, in the township, you also see the availability of durian. That's a happy surprise for me when I was back in my hometown there. And so it shows like how far the product services has penetrated into the Chinese market from ASEAN countries. Back to this pact here, we are expanding to, we mentioned about it, digital economy, green trade, supply chain connectivity, and also other areas like competition and consumer protection, micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Some say this reflects a joint commitment and action to take a lead in international rulemaking and promote cooperation in emerging sectors. Peter, what do you make of that?
I think we have reached a stage right now where we really need to take the lead in setting rules and norms. For many, many decades, and perhaps for much of the modern era, we have been in this part of the world rule takers. We were following rules set by others. But now we have reached a stage where we have reached that level of maturity and that at stake that we now should be able to set our own rules that reflects our own values, our own interests. And by the way, our own values and our own interests are universal and inclusive. They are not exclusive to us. I must say that. But we need to take that initiative, that bold step now. And one area I think that is very critical in terms of digital economy is the AI industry. And AI is still in a very open field where the norms, where the standards are still being worked on. And I think China and the rest of the region here, countries here in this part of the world, should take the initiative and start to step forward and set some rules and norms for the future of our own well-being and our own development.
Well, Peter, when we talk about the green economy, this digital trade and AI, or this industrial trend connectivity, it comes to mind this like a flow of investment and services. The industrial connectivity, between China and ASEAN countries. I would imagine investment from Chinese side in the new emerging areas, AI, for example, in Malaysia, or digital economy there, and like EVs, even green economy, right? So that probably we would see more of that. Is that the idea?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's growing. It's the next phase of our sort of cooperation. I think we have built enough of the ports and the railways that we need, and we got to move to the next level. We
Yes.
got to move into the cybersecurity level, the digital economy, and we need a lot of investment, especially human capital investment,
Right.
to train our younger workforce to integrate into that next level of growth.
Right. And also interesting, one point of interest, Rong Ying, in these upgraded agreement there. They talk about the green economy. Like China and ASEAN say they won't use environmental standards as a disguised form of trade protectionism. What experts call non-tariff barriers, and they will strive to eliminate such trade barriers related to environmental products and services. Tell us more on that. What does that exactly mean here?
Yeah, I think this is, again, a very important area where China and ASEAN are working together, not only in terms of following the rules as we are discussing, but most importantly, I think, making the rules so that I think the question of, or the challenge of climate change would be addressed or in a way that not only helps preventing the further disruptions of climate change, but most importantly, by turning the challenges into opportunities where new areas, new opportunity, investment, and better sort of thinkings would be achieved. And in this regard, I think objective or proper sort of understanding on how to manage these issues is very much important. There are many, I think, contentious issues, particularly, I think, the developed countries, Europe and others, using this opportunity to crush or to contain China's development. But having said that, China understands that this is a question. Very much related to how to strike a balance between the productive, the capabilities or capacity of production and the need for transition or transformation toward that. So this is very much again related to the larger issues, the bigger issues of fighting, managing the climate change. In this regard, I think we can only count on ourselves, which again, very much is now becoming an important area, one of the important areas for win-win cooperation. That, in the end, in the long run, is going to make a huge difference certainly for us, but also for the region and the world at large.
Mm-hmm. Well, in addition to this ASEAN summit, we see this, RCEP leader summit, the first of such, since it was signed 5 years ago. So, Anna, this comes as the protectionism or new tariff measures are once again reshaping trade flows. Do you see any message coming out of this, the timing of this meeting about this region's confidence in multilateralism and free trade?
Yes, I think the RCEP Leader Summit coinciding with the ASEAN Summit and even the upgrading of CAFTA 3.0 is not only symbolic, but I think it's very strategic. For me, what I see in terms of messaging between China, between ASEAN member states and other members of RCEP or the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership is that, in this part of the world, there is such a thing. And these countries are committed to what you call openness. It's committed to what you call regional integration, and especially economic. And it means that cooperation and partnership, they put premium on this kind of values. And I think there's a what you call a collective reaffirmation in the faith of multilateralism and regionalism. I think these are the message that I was able to get when I saw and I read in the papers that there was a RCEP leaders meeting. And I think this is also one way of looking at, the push of ASEAN member state and ASEAN as a bloc in trying to push and trying to, to tell the world that, there is such a thing as ASEAN centrality. And amidst the turbulence in the world, when you talk about trade protectionism and all of these challenges, geopolitical challenges that we're facing, ASEAN is in the forefront of all of this, regional integration and even economic partnership that is happening, not necessarily only with China, but even with other partners in the region. So this is the message that I got in this very momentous, also it's like a side-by-side kind of, event, which is very important in this part of the world. Yeah.
Well, Peter, given this centrality, the major principle for ASEAN countries, and also we talked about is being inclusive. ASEAN has trade partners not only in China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, also in the United States. The U.S. President Trump was there. During his presence, he signed basically 4 trade agreements with during this meetings. But according to Reuters, the White House later confirmed those agreements did not include a significant tariff reduction for countries such as Cambodia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam, but merely left room for future exemptions of certain products, I believe. How do ASEAN and other countries perceive such U.S. commitments? That seems more about promise of continuing trade, of course, but in the substantial level, it's about tariff still.
I think we are receiving this news with some cautious optimism, but with a great dose of skepticism, I must say. We have to see, after the declarations or agreements have been signed, what comes through. Based on our past experiences, sometimes this declaration doesn't really turn out into actions per se. I think countries in the regions has learned that, we obviously want to continue to engage everyone, including the United States, but we also have to be realistic based on the historical records that we have had, whether all that has been promised will be delivered. So I would say that we are receiving all these high-sounding agreements with lots of skepticism.
Yeah, Rong Ying, of course, the tariffs not only on ASEAN countries, but also China. I would say China is affected. ASEAN countries are also affected. That's a fact. According to one report by a think tank, saying that the ASEAN's GDP that would be affected by about 2.3%, and also employment also was affected, 5.9% drop. So maybe this is why, or this is the way to respond to that kind of pressure, by strengthening, but working together closely, by having more free trade and more free flow of investment and a stronger, more resilient industrial chain between ASEAN and other countries, other partners, including China here?
Yeah, that's exactly, I think, the significance of the sort of the agreements and the messages coming out of this summits. As we have seen, and we're discussing that, on the one hand, we have to oppose protectionism, demonstrated by the global tariff war. But most importantly, we have to demonstrate our commitment for unity, solidarity, with concrete actions. So that's why RCEPs and the China's, the ASEAN's FTA 3.0s carry significance. But it is equally important as we look at the summits. There are more, echoing or working, ready to work with ASEAN, and we have seen the participation by the Brazil president, South African government, and so on and so forth. So that is, I think, the reason, or that is the right way of how we can manage the uncertainties or challenges arising from.
Right, as the Premier Li said, openness and the cooperation is the key. With that, we are coming to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also find us on the CGTN app on YouTube. Xu Qingduo, thanks for being with us. See you next time.